There's something that happens after someone becomes a widow that people don't talk about enough, and that is the toxic positivity that a new widow will face, or a new widower, or someone who has just lost someone and they're grieving. And that toxic positivity will emerge, and it's not just the grief that the widow's dealing with, it's not just the loss, but it's the way that the world is responding to that loss. Because suddenly everyone has something to say, everyone has an opinion, everyone feels they need to share. That can be a good thing, and it can also go the opposite way and be a very, very distressing, bad thing. On the surface, it can sound comforting. But when you're the one who is living in it and through it, when you've just lost your person, sometimes words just don't feel comforting at all. They can feel dismissive, and they can feel confusing. And sometimes what people will say to a new widow or widower, or someone who's just lost their life partner, it can be even very isolating. A lot of that comes down again to the concept of toxic positivity. It is a thing. Toxic positivity can be kind of defined as that pressure to find the silver lining. And that's in a moment when, as a new widow, your whole life has just been shattered, and the last thing you want to hear about is how that there might be a silver lining to all this. So people will say things like, at least he's not suffering. Oh, everything happens for a reason. Or something like, you're strong. You've been so strong. You will get through this. You have like resilience. You're a strong person. You know, you'll get through this. You'll be fine. And you may not be feeling that way at all. You may not be feeling strong. And most of the time, people are saying these things, they're not thinking, they mean well, but meaning well doesn't erase the impact of what they've just said. Because what those phrases actually do is it shuts the door on what you as a new widow are really feeling. When someone says, well, at least, what you hear as a new widow is, this could have been worse. So your pain, should be smaller. It just should be smaller. Or when someone says to you as a new widow, everything happens for a reason. What you as a new widow hear is, there's a justification for what you just went through, or for your loss. And when someone tells a new widow, or a widower, or someone who's lost their life partner, to stay strong, what it feels like to the new widow or widower, or someone who's just lost their life partner, is, don't fall apart in front of me. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Grief doesn't work like that. Grief isn't a problem to solve. It's not something you reframe into positivity or looking for strength in that person who's just had a loss. It's not something that you rush through so that other people can feel comfortable. Grief is very disorienting. It's waking up every day and forgetting for about a half a second that anything happened bad. And just like half a second, your mind just doesn't let you think about. Maybe it's a protective thing that our minds do to help us. It just, you don't think about it. But then you remember it all over again, every detail, and it all comes rushing back. And it's little things like reaching out for a person or picking up the phone and calling someone who is not there anymore and telling someone that they're strong and they can get through whatever. It doesn't help that moment, doesn't make that moment any better. Reminding them that it could have been worse doesn't make that moment any better. It makes it worse. And for a new widower, loss of life partner, it's realizing that the life you thought you had, it's gone. It's just gone. And for us as new widows, or someone who has just had someone die, it's more than missing that person. It's losing a shared identity, because your identity was being part of a couple, part of a unit that is no longer there. It's losing the future, no matter what that looked like for you. If it was looking great, or looking like, okay, we have some things we need to work out, or we're looking at what retirement looks like. Whatever it was, that person that you were planning this with, this future, whatever it looked like, whatever it was going to be, they're gone. And it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of silence. And that silence can be deafening. The paperwork can be extremely overwhelming. And none of that has a silver lining. It just doesn't. So when people try to add a silver lining to things, it doesn't really help. It actually makes it harder. Because now, on top of grief, there's this quiet pressure to respond as a widow in the right way. Because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You don't want to make them feel bad because they are trying to reach out or say something. But it is very, very exhausting and very draining. Because especially in the first weeks as a widow, a new widow, you'll face a lot of it. Before the funeral, at the funeral, or celebration of life, you'll have a lot of that silver lining stuff in your face. How to respond. I found that I was just nodding, okay, smiling politely, okay, thank you for, being here. After someone said something really that just didn't make any sense. And you just say, thank you. Thank you for something that didn't feel really good to hear, but, it's how they were able to show up that day. And maybe that's all because of lack of insight or not understanding what they're saying has a real impact because you've just gone through a loss. It's just, the way to move forward and to move out of that conversation. And that's something I want to say clearly. If you are a widow or you're grieving, you're allowed to reject those silver lining, it will be better, it could be worse, he didn't suffer, he's in a better place, all of that. You can reject it. You can do it with kindness, but you can just let it go right in and out, because it truly doesn't offer the new widow or widower or someone who's grieving anything. So if you're someone who's watching this and are trying to support someone who's going through a loss, keep that in mind when you're choosing your words, because that toxic positivity can be very detrimental and be very hard for the person who's grieving to try to figure out, okay, well, what did they mean? Did they mean I should be trying to be more happy? Am I not doing the grieving right? Am I supposed to be at some other stage? And the truth is there's no way that you can comprehend and make sense of the chaos of that first few weeks or first month of being a new widow. You're allowed to feel exactly what you need to feel and how you feel. You don't have to make it more palatable for someone else. And I'm referring to the grief that you're feeling. You don't have to try to make them feel better. You can take in what they say, their toxic positivity, and just move on. And if you need words for that, a tip is that you don't have to be harsh. It can be simple and honest. And you can say, that really, the thing you just said, doesn't help me right now. Or, I know you mean well, but this is just really, really hard. Or even, I'm not looking for the bright side of this, or the positive side of this, or the silver lining. I just need space to feel like I do. And those aren't harsh words. That's just letting them know that what they said didn't really land well. What grieving people need are not perfect words. It's presence. Your presence. So if you're watching this as someone who is trying to support a grieving person, just showing up for them physically, or a kind text or a kind phone call, can change their entire day and maybe pull them out of some very dark place they were. So if you found this video and you're just watching for general interest, if you know someone who's going through something like this and is grieving, your presence is so important and something that just really can change someone's outlook, their day, their week, their month. Someone being helpful during this time looks like not necessarily giving advice or looking at bright sides, but someone who can just sit with you with the discomfort that you're in and not trying to fix it, not trying to find ways to fix it, not telling you stories about how so-and-so did this or that, or yeah, it's just not the time. Just sitting with them and letting them express their grief, even if it means awkward silences. It's very helpful. Helpful beyond what you could possibly even know. So if you are supporting someone who is a widow, this part really matters. You don't need to have to say the right thing. You don't need to feel like you have to make it better. But you can say, I am here. I know this is really hard for you. And you know what? You can sit here and you don't have to be okay with me. You can cry. You can express whatever emotions you need to, because that crying makes a lot of people very uncomfortable, but it might just be what that person who just had the experience the loss really needs to do, and just needs to have someone there with them. And then if you can do that, you stay. You don't disappear for a week or a month, or let weeks go by and not ask how someone's doing. It sounds cruel, but it actually happens. I've talked to widows, other widows, and it's a common thing, because people just think, well, the funeral's over, she's or he's probably doing fine, we haven't heard anything, so everything must be okay. Don't assume that the widow or widower is doing better just because time has passed. And you have to understand that grief doesn't follow a schedule. The Kubler-Ross model of grief is very nice textbook material, but grief is a roller coaster, and it doesn't follow any pattern. It can look so many different ways, and it really depends upon each individual. Grief doesn't end after the funeral's over with, after the celebration of life is over with. It doesn't end after a funeral luncheon. It doesn't end a week later, or a month later, or 2 months later, or 2 years later, or 3 years later. Grief has its own timeline for every person. And it doesn't wrap up neatly. It changes shape, but it stays. One of the most powerful things that you can do as someone who's supporting someone who's going through grief after a loss is just make space for that, without trying to brighten it up, without trying to reframe it into your paradigm or what would you think would work or not work, and without trying to rush that process, because grief can't be rushed. And grief doesn't need a silver lining. It just needs room. It needs room to exist. It needs room to be messy. And it needs room to be unfinished. And widows, especially new widows, they don't need to be reminded to stay positive. They need to be allowed to be real and to heal. And however long that takes, that's how long it takes. And sometimes the most compassionate thing you can say to someone who is grieving is simply, I see how much this hurts. I'm here for you. And I'm happy to sit with you, even in silence, while you grieve. It could be the best gift that you could possibly give them. Thank you for watching. And as always, take care.